Hello everyone, this is Reza and welcome to the next part of the intermediate rigging. In this video we're going to pick up where we left off and we're going to create controls for our FK chain. So one way to go about this is to create locators at the center of each joint, orient the locators correctly, and parent the controls to the locator and orient constraint to bone to the controllers. So that's one way of doing this. It does take time. Another problem is for T pose, this works beautifully. For A pose, then you need to worry about orientation of each control, and that can be a headache. Instead, I thought it would be a good idea, since it's intermediate rigging, to dive into scripting a little, get our hands dirty a little, and get this done very fast through Python scripting. So I have my Python scripting editor open, and I can go ahead and hide the character. Now remember that what we did, we made the skin chain and IK chain and all the controllers invisible, and all we have visible is FK shoulder, FK elbow, and FK wrist. And we need 3 controllers to directly have an impact on those joints. It can be orient constraint, it can be parent constraint. We're going to use parent constraint for this example, and the whole thing is going to be very straightforward. I'm not going to type word by word. I would rather copy and paste paragraphs in there and explain how the script works. And we are going to finish this in no time at all. So first things first, I just want to import commands from Maya, and we are going to work with our selection. So CMDS, the list that I'm going to create, I'm going to use my selection. I'm going to create 2 attributes, controller and has parent, and put none in them. We can create a for loop, and we can say, if we have nothing selected, create a NURBS curve for us. But if we have something already in the loop or selected, then in this case go ahead and duplicate it. So if I go to the next line, be mindful of the indentations. You can say in a for loop that only work with the selected joints. You don't need to apply this to the entire skeleton. And then if controller which we created has nothing in it, then in this case go ahead and create a circle. I added normals to X to 1, Y and Z to 0. That's how we usually create NURBS curves. And also the naming convention is up to you. We can say name it. I usually start naming my controls with CTRL underscore to begin with. So that's the type of naming convention I'm going to go for, followed by the name of the joint, which is the I. Now, because it's a for loop and we have conditional statement, of course we need to say else. But if we do have something, in this case, duplicate it and name it the exact same name that we give in here, which is CTRL underscore name of the joint. Next, we are going to create a group node. I'm just going to go 1 line down, create a group node, and make the group node empty. The idea is once the circle or any curve is created, we want to parent that to a group node, and we've done that with our elbow, we've done that with our knee, foot control, and the wrist control. So this one is no exception. We're going to create a group node and em equal to 1. So we want to make sure that the group node is empty, and we're going to name it the name of the control, which is here or here, followed by underscore grp01. And again, that's the naming convention that I'm gonna use. And once that's done, then we're gonna parent the control and put it inside the group node. Now I'm going to make some room and I'm going to continue. Then we're going to create a parent constraint to fix the orientation. We select the the script selects the bone and the group with maintain offset set to 0, so no maintain offset. And once that's done, go ahead and delete the parent constraint. Now we need another parent constraint between the control, which is the driver, and I, which is the bone that we're selecting, because eventually the control is going to drive the joints with no maintain offset. The nature of the constraint is going to be a parent constraint. And of course, finally, we would like to parent everything back together. So we are going to parent the curve to the group node and make sure everything is nice and clean. Now, the way you run the script is if I select my joints in order, and I can go ahead and hide the character for now. I can select the entire script. You can either go to command and execute it, or you can just right click on it and go execute. Now a few things are going to happen. First things first, you're going to see the parent constraint now has been assigned to shoulder, elbow, and wrist FK. But even better, if you look at the outliner, you can see now we have 3 controls with the almost correct naming convention. It's just a matter of find and replace tool to be used to fix some of these namings, but we're almost there. Now, if you look at the actual control, you can see the transformation is clean, and more importantly, the orientation is dead accurate, and that is the main selling point. That's exactly what we want. So with that, I can actually, since we have the parent constraint in place, I can just go ahead and use the parent constraint and use the controller with the parent constraint attached to create forward kinematics effect. Great, that's exactly what we want. So please pause the video and go through the script here and make sure to use the name correctly, so no spelling issues, no indentation issues. And once that's done, you can unpause the video and continue. Now it's time for us to reshape the controllers. Again, we don't want to spend too much time, and there is another way of doing this, and that is for me to actually create my own control and replace it with these circles. Since we are using actually a circle for our wrist control, I think it's a good idea to use, I don't know, a cube instead and replace it with these circles through our script. So I can just bring back the script, and it's actually would be a good idea to kind of put that to a test as well, since for now I said there is no controller exists, so it's set to none, and that's why we're creating circle by default. But actually I can put a control in there and say use that one instead. So let's actually try that. So I'm just going to bring my script for controls, and I'm going to create a cube curve. I'm going to zoom back to find the cube. The size of it is fine. The only thing is you need to make sure that it's pointing towards x-axis, and the name in the outline is curve 0 or curve 1. So I'm just going to copy the name and let's use it in our script. Since it's a string, I'm just going to put this into double quotation, so it should turn yellow, or whatever name you use, you just use it here. And I'm going to actually delete the whole thing and using the curve that I have. So I'm going to select all 3 joints, select my script, but this time using the curve one as our default controller, right click and go execute. Fantastic. Now instead of having circles, now we have cubes to reshape. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time reshaping the points. Obviously you don't want to move the geometry, you don't want to move any of these cubes. That's why the geometry, the layer has been frozen. And you can always right click and go to control vertex, and you can use orthographic and use that to your advantage, side and front, and reshape. You can also bring, if there's any accessory available, you can bring back all of these accessories and make sure there is no overlap. The idea in a nutshell is animators should be able to select those controllers easily, and that is it. So I'm just going to hide that. I think that's unnecessary. I'm just going to go through each one of these controls and I'm going to reshape them real quick. Again, you have ample amount of time in the future to go back and reposition and redesign each curve. I'm going to press F, go to the outliner, and very quickly I'm going to go ahead and recolor them, because on the right hand side I want them to be red. So red for the shoulder, red for the elbow, and red for the wrist. Now, since the naming convention I use is CTRL, L, FK, or IK, and there is no J and T, I'm going to go very quickly and fix those in Outliner. Again, you can always go ahead and use search and replace names. For example, in this case, I'm just going to select all of the controls and say find CTRL_JNT_L and replace it with CTRL_L_ and go replace. Done. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fix the JNTE as well. Now I can go ahead and select these two and do the same thing. You can go through the modify, or the other way is to go ahead and manually, since we are only dealing with 3, you can just go ahead and fix everything manually, like so. Done. Now, since we're just going to orient each control, we really don't need to see translate and scale of any of these controls. So I can just select all 3. With translate and scale selected, I can just right click and go lock and hide. So all we deal with is just rotation. You can go ahead and do the same thing for other controls that we've created and probably didn't have time to clean them up. For example, for Pole Victor, we don't need to see the scale. Same thing for the wrist control, IK wrist control. You can go ahead and hide the scale values from the actual controller. And that's that. Now, with that, let's go ahead and explore how we can connect the FK and IK and let the skin chain, the main chain, to transition between the two. And we are going to do that using Node Editor. Now, the end goal behind blending between IK and FK is mainly for animators to have a control available so they can blend between any inverse kinematic position and forward kinematic position. This means that we need to somehow and somewhat tie our IK chain and our FK chain using the original chain that we have. So we need to, first things first, unhide our IK chain, and our IK chain will get controlled by the IK control. So I will bring this one back too, and I'm going to bring back the original JNTL shoulder as well. So let's move them to the side, or orient them rather to the side, so we get to see the transition between them. Otherwise, if they're in the exact same location as our main chain, then we're not gonna see much. So I'm gonna select the IK control as well. I don't need to see its scale, so before anything else, I'm gonna go and lock and hide its scale values. So I'm going to select and move my IK chain up. Now I have my IK, I have my FK, and the original chain. Now the control that I want to create, eventually we would like to populate that custom attribute onto every single control that we have. So for now, it really doesn't matter where you put that custom attribute, but later on, we are going to duplicate and populate that custom attribute and place it on every single control that we have, including our elbow even, because we just want to make it accessible to animators. And we're going to use Python for that. But for now, I'm going to use my IK wrist control. I'm going to go to Modify, Add Attribute. I'm going to call this IK FK switch. So where we in IK, we want this value to be 0, that's our minimum, and when we transition to FK, we want the maximum value for this custom attribute to be 1. So we transition between 0 to 1, IK to FK, 1 to 0, FK to IK. Also be mindful of the name of the attribute. Feel free to just use it IKFK. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to use it IKFK. I'm going to keep everything simple, and I'm going to go apply, and then we're going to get the attribute in our channel box, and the attribute is on our wrist control for now. Now we have the custom attribute available. It's time to bring in our bones one by one into Node Editor and tie them together so they will transition from one point to another point using this custom attribute. For now, I'm going to use elbow, and I want you to pay close attention to how I do it, and then we are going to just rinse and repeat, do the same thing for the so when we do this for the shoulder, then we do this for the elbow, and eventually going to do this for the exact same rinse and repeat process for the wrist bones. So I'm going to move this to the side, and of course it's a good idea to, for now, I'm going to turn off the shading mode, so all I see is mainly joints. Now I can go to Windows, I can go to Node Editor, bring up the Node Editor here, and what we want in the Node Editor is the actual control, the FK shoulder, IK shoulder, and the main shoulder. So these 3 shoulder bones plus the control, and I'm going to click on this button here to bring them over. If you click on the control wrist for the IK, it brings the actual node with it as well, and that's the one that we have the attribute on. But for now, I'm just going to bring the control wrist, press 3 on it to expand so we can see all the attributes. I'm going to bring the JNT shoulder, press 3 on it on the opposite side, because we are going to connect this attribute to the rotation value of the shoulder joint using these 2 IK and FK bones. So I'm just going to press 3 on them and expand them as well. The actual curve, we don't need this for now. I'm going to bring these 2 to the side. Now the way we work and the node that we use is a utility node, and it's called blend colors. So if I press tab and search for blend colors node, this is an extremely useful node. So in texturing, you can use a checkerboard, assign it to color 1, and you can just have a procedural wood texture, assign it to color 2, and have the output and plug it to a Lambert, Blinn, AI standard shader, any typical shader, primary shader that you want, and you just blend the two colors. And that blender is more like a mix where it removes the dark areas and it basically masks between color 1 and color 2. This utility node is also very popular amongst riggers, where RGB colors represent XYZ. And guess what we have? We have rotation values, XYZ values, and we have rotation values in our IK, XYZ values, where we can easily plug them into color 1 and color 2 and feed the result to the original color value for our main chain. So let's do that. The mix attribute, the blender attribute, of course, is going to be our IKFK. So I'm just gonna plug that in. From a rotation for our FK goes to color 1 and it snaps, but again, that's fine. And Maya creates a unit conversion to convert XYZ into RGB. So it's just understandable for Maya. You don't need to worry about that. And of course, for our, I'm just gonna move the IK here and joint here. And our IK rotation value goes to color 2. And we get another unit conversion as well. Now the output of our color blend goes to rotation of the main joint, and again Maya creates a unit conversion for us. Let's go ahead and rename this really quick. So we are going to create 3 of these guys, so it's better to be very clear about which blend node belongs to what bone. So this is for shoulder. And now you can just pause the video and do the exact same thing for the other 2 bones, for the elbow and for the wrist. Now just to see the effect, I'm just gonna click on the attribute. You can see this is the default value for IK, and we have FK. If I select IK, FK, hold down Control, you can see now we can transition between IK and FK. And so far we've done just the shoulder. Now it's time to bring elbow and then wrist and create that blend using color blend node. So make sure when you're in IK, the main chain snaps to IK. When you're in FK, which is a value of 1, if you remember, the main chain should snap to FK. And later on, we're just gonna hide IK and FK and only work with the main chain. Very, very cool. I'm going to undo to bring the main chain back to the position it was. Now I'm going to go and bring the node editor. You can create a new tab if you don't want to clean the tab that you had. And now let's bring the other 3 and do the exact same thing. Now that's done as well. So let's go ahead and put that to a test. Now both shoulder and elbow should follow or transition or blend between IK and FK using color blend node. That is really, really cool. Now again, you can, if you see that there's a slight difference. So right now I'm in 0.03 and seems like that is my minimum. If I go to 0, the bone won't align accurately. So you can go ahead and find this value and make that your minimum. and that's what I'm going to do. But for now, shoulder and elbow are following the chain beautifully, and they blend between IK and FK. All I need to do is do the same thing for the wrist and get that one sorted as well. Again, sometimes this may disconnect the output for the other output to the rotation. So make sure to go ahead and connect that. It's just a bug, but it shouldn't be a problem. Just check the output unit conversion. Make sure this node is not lost. And once that's done, then we have the perfect blend between IK and FK. So I can just simply transition between IK and FK successfully. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to reset all of these attributes and all of these controls. I'm just going to zero them out, so they're going to snap to the right position. Now you can go ahead and hide your IK chain and FK chain. You don't need them anymore because you do have the blend attribute to do this for you. And of course, if you want to set minimum and maximum or tweak the attribute for whatever reason, you can always go to edit and edit the attribute that you have. If it's IKFK, you want to set minimum and maximum, you can easily do that and say that's the minimum value that I would like to have, and it's going to fix that for you. Now that's how you apply IKFK, and the value of 0 always looks at IK, and of course you can always transition to FK anytime you want. Now that's done. There's only one thing left, and that is to just very quickly explain how to copy this attribute and this custom attribute onto other controls, including my elbow control. So I'm going to bring back my elbow control here. So I would like to have that IKFK switch not only on this IK, but also on every other control on the right arm or left arm. It's just more convenient for me to access it. And the beauty of this is once you keyframe that IKFK attribute, you won't be able to keyframe it again on other controllers. So it's just a one-off thing. It's just more accessible to animators. So with that, I'm going to bring my Python page. Just going to go ahead and click on this button right here to create a Python page. And if you don't have that tab, you can always click on that plus button and just choose Python. Now, of course, you always want to import your commands. So import cmds, which is the Python library. Then I'm going to create an attribute. I'm going to call this main CTRL, and that's my main control. And that main control is this attribute. So that's where we have this IKFK custom attribute to begin with. So I'm just going to copy its name, which is CRTL LIK-01 in my case. So make sure to check that out. I'm going to create a secondary attribute, and let's call this ATTR for attribute. And this secondary attribute represents the name we gave to this custom attribute on channel box. For the sake of being simple with everything, I just named this IKFK, and that's what I will be using. Now it's all a matter of using a for loop for this. So I can say for CTRL, for every control in my commands and the list that I have, and I put the SL21, I want this to be added to the control that I'm selecting. Now it's almost done. All I need to do is just to select the controls that I want to have this IKFK to be added to, which is going to be all of my FK controls plus the elbow. And I'm going to simply select this script, right click on it and go execute. And IKFK attribute is now added to everything. I think that's enough for one session. We've gone through so many new and exciting topics in this session. So I truly hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and in the next tutorial we are going to fix the controllers for the clavicle, which I promise is much simpler than what we did in this video. Have a great one and see you in the next video.